Hello and good evening to friends. Good evening to friends and colleagues joining us from across Pakistan and beyond. My name is Riaz Khokhar and I am a research officer at the Center for International Strategic Studies, Islamabad. I'm honored and pleased to welcome you to the CISS webinar on YOUM-E-TAKBEER, recalling 24 years of Pakistan's nuclear test. On this day, we commemorate the extraordinary achievement of successful testing of the nuclear weapon capability, notwithstanding tight international scrutiny, pressure, and various restrictions. We also relive the moment of the 28th of May 1998 to pay tribute to the historic and pioneering role played by the founders of the nuclear program and those that have sustained it, institutionalized it under the National Command Authority, and advanced it to establish nuclear deterrence and restore strategic stability in South Asia. They are politicians, scientists, and civil military bureaucrats. Thank you for providing Pakistan with the guarantor of survival and security. So we have a highly distinguished panel of speakers from Pakistan. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, the Executive Director of CISS Islamabad, Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja, the Executive Director of CISS Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and Dr. Zafar Khan, the Executive Director of the Balochistan Think Tank Network. Unfortunately, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, the Executive Director of CISS Sindh, could not join us today as he felt unwell. We wish him good health. So each panelist will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we will have the Q&A session at the end. So before I hand over mic to the first speaker on the list, Ambassador Naqvi, let me introduce him first. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi possesses a profound diplomatic career of 36 years from 1970 to 2006, which culminated in senior ambassadorial positions at the United Nations, both in New York and Vienna, and Washington, D.C., London, Paris, and Brussels. After his retirement from the Foreign Services of Pakistan, Ambassador Naqvi was appointed as a member of the Chairman's Advisory Council at the Pakistan Atomic Energy Agency and worked as an advisor to the Chairman PAEC on international affairs with a particular focus on IAEA matters. Ambassador Naqvi is presently serving as the founding executive director of CISS Islamabad. He established this think tank in 2010 with the objective of promoting a better understanding between Pakistan and the international community on Pakistan's foreign policy and nuclear affairs. Sir, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Riaz. Assalamu alaikum and Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It is a great pleasure to participate in this webinar, which is being held today, the 28th of May, the date on which we conducted our nuclear tests 24 years ago. So it is a special day and a matter of satisfaction and happiness for all of us. I congratulate participants in this webinar as well as all other persons listening to us on this special occasion. I want to speak about India and Pakistan's nuclear explosions in May 1998, and we are here to study or to assess all the implications of this momentous development. I'll first give you a background of Pakistan's nuclear policy and Pakistan's nuclear position ever since we started. Pakistan began as an adherent of nuclear non-proliferation, which it still remains, and a practitioner of peaceful uses of nuclear energy. However, the security environment in our immediate neighborhood, especially on the east, compelled us to develop a classified military program aimed at developing nuclear weapons. The immediate trigger for the Pakistani nuclear tests were the Indian tests on May 11 and 13, 1998. The geostrategic situation suddenly changed after this event, which put Pakistan in a serious security dilemma given the background of hostility with India over the years, manifest in 3 wars that India fought with Pakistan. Subsequently, India's aggressive attitude towards Pakistan and the lukewarm response of the major powers as well as the international community on India's nuclearization, overt nuclearization, compelled Pakistan to follow suit. In the wake of India's test, Pakistan felt an urgent need to demonstrate its own capability in a similar manner and for a number of important reasons. To deny India, number one, the unilateral technical advantage it might have gained from conducting the tests, and thus revise the power dynamics in the bilateral equation. The other factor was India's intransigence in resolving the Kashmir dispute, which had continued to linger over all these years, ever since the independence of the 2 countries. Third, India's conventional edge over Pakistan, as well as its nuclear capability, was a reason for Pakistan's own decision to conduct the tests. Then there were the situation in Kashmir was getting more and more worrisome, because in December 1989, armed resistance to Indian rule in occupied Kashmir began in the valley. And then in April 1990, a crisis in the valley broke out as Indian military mobilization threatened to create a war situation between India and Pakistan. So these developments were worrisome as they existed. And then India decided to detonate 5 nuclear devices in May 1998. And as a result, Pakistan was obliged to do the same. The Foreign Office spokesman issued a statement on the eve of the 20th anniversary of the May 28, 1998 nuclear tests, in which he said that the testing of atomic bombs by India eliminated the chances of a nuclear weapon-free zone in South Asia, which Pakistan had been advocating for many years. Pakistan was forced to take the decision as a response in self-defense to the nuclear tests and accompanying hostile posturing by its neighbor. These developments unfortunately put an end to the prospect of keeping South Asia free of nuclear weapons, an objective which Pakistan had actively pursued, he said. The spokesman said that despite the nuclear testing, Pakistan remained steadfast in its commitment to non-proliferation, global peace, and strategic stability, and demonstrated utmost restraint and responsibility in the stewardship of its nuclear capability since 1998. I am citing the Foreign Office spokesman and his statement of on the 20th anniversary of the test, because that was a comprehensive statement of the government's point of view. The spokesman said that despite the nuclear testing, Pakistan has remained firmly committed to non-proliferation. Pakistan is concerned about the nuclear confrontation with India. It has therefore placed on the table proposals for nuclear restraint regime that could regulate the nuclear program of the 2 countries. In this way, it hopes to reduce the high degree of nuclear tensions in the region. And when talks are held between the 2 countries, Pakistan would pursue, as and when it does, progress in this regard. Now, Pakistan, ever since it became a nuclear weapon state, continued its nuclear diplomacy in practice on the principles of restraint and responsibility. Pakistan was even reluctant to enter the club of nuclear weapon states, but soon after India had conducted its first nuclear tests in the year 1974, Going nuclear became Pakistan's strategic compulsion. India's series of nuclear tests in 1998 had compelled Pakistan to demonstrate its nuclear weapons capability. The development of nuclear weapons capability in Pakistan primarily serves the purpose of a credible and reliable defense against the existential threat from India and to maintain peace and stability in the region. After the inevitable nuclearization of South Asia and development of Pakistan's nuclear program, Pakistan has avoided becoming a part of any arms race. Pakistan has no intent to indulge in an arms race in the region, and it has consequently been open to dialogue and arms control initiatives at the regional and international levels. In this regard, Pakistan's proposal at the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva in June 2020 is also part of this responsible diplomacy, nuclear diplomacy, in which it urges the international community to take steps to develop consensus on arms control and disarmament. As part of its non-proliferation efforts in the past, Pakistan had also proposed various confidence-building measures at the regional level. For instance, in 1974, Pakistan had proposed making South Asia a nuclear weapon-free zone. In 1978, it made a proposal for a joint Indo-Pak declaration renouncing the manufacture and acquisition of nuclear weapons. Similarly, in 1979, Pakistan had proposed the mutual inspection of each other's nuclear facilities. However, all these proposals and ideas were terminated or brought to an end by the Indian action of May 11 and May 13, 1998. Hence, in the nuclear age, global strategic stability cannot be achieved without taking non-proliferation measures in a collective manner. There is a need for an enabling environment at both the global and regional levels for successful nuclear non-proliferation engagements. Despite India's perilous and non-cooperative role in the non-proliferation regime, Pakistan believes that it should continue to act responsibly and maintain a constructive and responsible attitude in nuclear diplomacy. Of course, it must be noted here that after all these years of having achieved nuclear capability, Pakistan is a confident nuclear state and it expects to be seen as one. So the nuclear weapons capability is obviously there that we have achieved, but we have been taking efforts or making all kinds of efforts to undertake effective nuclear diplomacy to deal with this. Then we have a long experience of peaceful uses of nuclear technology and nuclear use. We have always been interested in utilizing the potential of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes and helping us utilize the energy that it provides. The energy mix of this country comprises natural gas, coal, hydropower, and nuclear power, respectively. Nuclear energy provides a clean and reliable option, and thus Pakistan is increasing its reliance on this alternative. Pakistan's efforts in the peaceful application of nuclear technology is recognized at the international level as well, as its nuclear power plants and research reactors are all under IAEA safeguards. It has a record of cooperation with IAEA of over 50 years and consistently shares information with the International Atomic Energy Agency regarding all the activities that are undertaken in the nuclear power plants, the agriculture labs, the medicinal facilities, and is always open to inspection by IAEA to ensure the safety and security of nuclear and radioactive material, to make sure that they are well disposed of. In an effort to address its economic woes and its energy crisis, Pakistan continues working on the peaceful applications of nuclear technology. The utilization of nuclear technology is an indication of Pakistan's commitment towards making particular benefiting particularly from this source. And then there is nuclear safety and security culture that Pakistan has developed. It has proved itself to be a responsible nuclear state and has an impeccable record of maintaining the safety and security of its nuclear infrastructure. Its nuclear weapons have been widely criticized by the West, and a debate regarding Pakistan's nuclear safety and security is going on from time to time, which says that Pakistan's nuclear weapons are at a high risk of falling into the hands of non-state actors. However, this is just propaganda against Pakistan, as it has taken important measures to strengthen its nuclear safety and enhance its nuclear security culture over the past 2 decades, in accordance with IAEA guidelines. These steps include the implementation of effective laws and legislation for its nuclear program, adopting organizational practices around nuclear security to prevent and detect theft, sabotage, unauthorized access, as well as illegal transfer of nuclear and other radioactive material. Pakistan has also established autonomous regulatory bodies such as the NCA, PAEC, PNRA, and SECDIV that are responsible for maintaining and enhancing the nuclear security culture that I have mentioned before. In fact, Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission has been bringing its international stakeholders of various nuclear organizations and other nuclear scientists, etc., engineers, to observe our safety and security program and share their assessments about them. So, as we observe this 24th anniversary of our nuclear tests, we look forward confidently to the future with our nuclear capabilities and our peaceful uses of nuclear energy. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Naqvi, for an illuminating account and a comprehensive explanation of Pakistan's nuclear weapon program, including the peaceful uses of it, and also setting the tone for this discussion. Now let's move over to Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja to hear her perspective on the YOUM-E-TAKBEER. But let me introduce her first. Dr. Asma Khawaja is the Executive Director of the CISS Azad Jammu and Kashmir and a former Assistant Professor at the National Defense University, Islamabad. Dr. Asma received her doctorate in South Asian Studies from the Institute of South Asian Studies, Martin Luther University, Germany. She is a recipient of the Presidential Gold Medal of Merit and Alumni Achievement Award by the APCSS. She is also associated with the distinguished international consultancies, including varieties of democracy project as the regional research consultant for South Asia, and Peace Direct London and Search for Common Ground. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for such a generous introduction. I've been head of the Department of Strategic Studies at National Defense University as associate professor. So, and I really appreciate Ambassador Zafar Naqvi's comprehensive presentation on Pakistan's role and Pakistan's achievements since we have conducted a nuclear test 24 years back. I must appreciate CISS Islamabad for organizing the webinar on such important topic on this significant day, 28th May. A day manifests that our foreign and defense policies are independent and no pressure, no offer can push us to compromise our sovereignty and resolve to deter India through our credibility. Initiating nuclear program was not Pakistan's choice, but compulsion due to the aggressive and hegemonic strategic designs of India. Our timely strategic responses to leave no stone unturned to maintain our integrity and deterrence is definitely a sign of strong and independent nation. 28th May is the day when Indian efforts to tilt the regional strategic balance in her favor proved to be futile, and Pakistan, despite limited resources and international pressure, once again balanced India effectively. This is the day to salute the scientists, engineers, technicians, security forces, and the political scientists for their contributions to ensure our sovereignty and development. After 24 years of the nuclear tests, there are certain observations regarding Pakistan and India's strategic behavior, which I would share here with all of you. First of all, I would talk about Pakistan. Pakistan tested nuclear weapons to seek peaceful coexistence. Pakistan utilized nuclear technology for civilian purposes to support medical, industrial, agriculture, environment, and energy sectors. Pakistan is actively contributing to the international efforts for strengthening global norms on arms control, nuclear non-proliferation, and disarmament. Pakistan adopted international standards on export controls, nuclear safety, and security. These efforts are well acknowledged by IAEA as well. For Pakistan, nuclear technology is a mean for strategic stability. Alhamdulillah, Pakistan's nuclear command and control is one of the best in the world. We applaud the efforts and achievements of National Command Authority to make it possible. There is not a single incident of nuclear theft, firing of missile by mistake, or radioactive material available in black market. Not a single incident of any negligence when it comes to nuclear safety and security. Alhamdulillah. Now, as Ambassador Naqvi has very comprehensively elaborated Pakistan's efforts, so I will try to focus on India. For India, nuclear weapons are to advance its hegemonic designs. They are not to ensure her survival, but to threaten the survival of smaller regional states. For them, nuclear weapons are to undermine the sovereignty of regional states. Despite her claims regarding China as a threat perception, a bulk of Indian nuclear weapons aims at Pakistan. The popular public opinion in India, unfortunately, is in favor of the use of nuclear weapons against Pakistan. In Indian strategic culture, here I would like to mention that in Indian strategic culture, weapons of mass destruction are the ultimate tool to destroy the enemy completely and tilt the balance of power in her favor permanently. In almost all the Vedic wars, the Hindu gods used these weapons to eliminate enemy mercilessly, the weapons of mass destruction. Indian policy to establish conventional strikes as the new normal in deterrence relations with Pakistan has made the already volatile environment more dangerous and unpredictable. As Indian strategic culture indicates, they don't consider balance of power as a source of security. Therefore, the revisionist India kept on disturbing the strategic balance within the region through her defense policies aimed at power maximization. Not only South Asia, but India also nuclearized the Indian Ocean. India leads in developing an assured sea-based second strike capability with Russian and Western assistance. India's pursuit of naval nuclear capabilities in the Indian Ocean destabilizes the nuclear deterrence equation in South Asia. A series of weapons to be deployed on India's nuclear submarines, including the short-range K-15 of 750 kilometers and intermediate range K-4 variant of submarine-launched ballistic missiles with a missile range of 35,000 kilometers. Their potential for accidental nuclear escalation due to India's lack of experience in operating a sea-based nuclear deterrent presents an alarming situation or a new normal in South Asia. The Joint Doctrine of Indian Armed Forces 2017 suggests that India is moving from threat-based to capability-based developments. And this is really, really important to understand. This could imply that eventually capabilities will be driving Indian strategy, not the threats. This move from threat-based to capability-based force posture developments is clearly visible in Indian program because they are focusing on both on quantitative and qualitative proliferation. When it comes to nuclear command and control, India becoming a thriving nuclear black market, unfortunately. Around 18 nuclear materials theft and lost incidents were reported in India from 1994 to 2021, involving theft of over 200 kilograms nuclear material poses grave threats of nuclear terrorism in South Asia, necessitating the concerned global institutions' role to raise safety standards. The material could fall into the hands of extremists and terrorists in India, and this would be a grave threat for the regional security with disastrous consequences. The out of control material could also be a cause of concern due to the proliferation reasons as well. It is also the responsibility of global organizations and India's partners to raise the standards of nuclear safety and security in the country and investigate shortcomings of maintaining tight controls on nuclear and radioactive materials in India. India's no first use policy and notion of minimalism has never been credible. Recent technological developments hint towards ready-to-use arsenals and counter-force targeting, which is detrimental for this peace and stability in the region. Not only this, but the nuclear thinking in India is in the hands of extremist elements, the followers of Hindutva ideology. India's leadership's boastful nuclear rhetoric dents India's image as a mature and responsible nuclear weapon states. Instead of ensuring a stable environment, India pursues strategic superiority and escalation dominance against Pakistan. New Delhi's continued quest for limited space under nuclear overhang is destabilizing for sure for the regional peace. India operates the world's fastest growing nuclear program. And unlike Pakistan, several of India's civil nuclear facilities are not under IAEA safeguards mechanism and hence exhibit a risk of diversion of material for weapon production. India has been developing a nuclear city where excessive production of fissile material may allow it to conduct thermonuclear weapons tests that would further jeopardize global efforts to stop nuclear testing. India's import of huge quantities of uranium for so-called peaceful purposes allow it to divert its indigenous uranium for weapons production. And latestly, the March 9th incident by India on misfiring BrahMos supersonic cruise missile causes implications for the South Asian region. Cruise missile fired from India, CISS, landed in Pakistan on 9th March 2022. India showed irresponsible behavior by not informing Pakistan about this misfire of missile, despite the presence of the hotline between the DGMOs of both countries. The inability of this missile self-destruct mechanism, if in place, to engage sheds further light on the non-credibility of the BrahMos missile. The cruise missile incident showed the profound level of incompetence in handling of sensitive weapons among Indian forces. This also shows that Indian forces lack competent staff personnel to handle military equipments even during peacetime, and that too of such sensitive nature. Therefore, India needs to explain if the missile was indeed handled by its armed forces or some rogue elements. Now, very briefly, I would discuss the strategic challenges that affect South Asia in contemporary strategic domain and in the presence of emerging technologies. Some food for thought for the upcoming strategists. First of all, with technological developments and emerging technologies, the combination of two capabilities, nuclear and cyber, remains critical. Nuclear weapons, like other weapons and nuclear command and control, the NC3 systems, will be facing a threat matrix that includes cyber attacks and cyber defenses. In the current economic context, it is hard to assume that Pakistan and India will be able to afford to modernize their nuclear forces and to keep pace with the threat posed by cyber and other new technologies. And this is a pertinent challenge for both of them. Moreover, new technologies and their spin-offs are integrating the nuclear and cyber capabilities. The command and control systems for nuclear weapons rely upon advanced cyber systems, offering potential strengths and weaknesses, and the strategists on both sides need to clearly articulate and evaluate those strengths and weaknesses and find solutions for that. Moreover, quick, accurate, cohesive, inclusive, and informed decision-making process is required to respond to any threat posed by the cyber or emerging technologies. It seems a difficult task in Indian context. India's COVID response policy and decision-making by their current political regime makes this assumption even more important. Defending space-based weapons from cyber and kinetic attacks will require rapid decisions by senior leaders and fast-moving decision-making processes. Unlike US and Russia, geographical expanse, where even hypersonic delivery systems will take some time to reach their targets, South Asia, India and Pakistan have this geographical proximity. Therefore, cyber and hypersonic missiles will create a response dilemma for both of them. This may increase the risk of preemption in the region. Weaponization of space is another new normal. India nuclearized South Asia, as I said earlier. India nuclearized Indian Ocean, and now it has nuclearized the space as well by bringing nuclear weapons to the space and weaponized space with AS-80 anti-satellite weapons program in February 2019. With advancement of surveillance and remote sensing capabilities, it will be increasingly difficult to hide nuclear delivery platforms from the adversary. Small satellites with advanced sensors to detect road mobile missiles in a coordinated, intelligent, and remotely guided way represents a fundamentally new challenge to the strategic forces. Artificial intelligence and emerging technologies poses great challenge to South Asian security calculus. These technologies will be able to target the nuclear command, communication, and critical infrastructure networks, disrupting an adversary's nuclear decision-making chains. Defense against these technologies may assure strategic stability and restraint. Otherwise, they will intensify the uncertainty and security dilemma in South Asia. So these are the issues on which we have to pledge and we have to work as the political scientists and strategists of Pakistan to find solutions of these problems so that we can ensure or sustain strategic stability in South Asia despite India's continuous efforts to destabilize them. Because India's strategic culture and Pakistan's strategic culture are not similar, and our aspirations or our worldview are also not similar as well. So thank you so much for your patience. Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you, Dr. Khwaja, for your perspective on India's nuclear policies and nuclear weapon program and developments and technological developments. Let's now turn to another worthy guest, Dr. Zafar Khan, who has been waiting for long. Dr. Zafar Khan is the executive director of the Balochistan Think Tank Network and a professor with the Department of International Relations, Balochistan University of Information Technology, Engineering and Management Sciences, Quetta. He did his master's in international politics from the University of Glasgow and a PhD in strategic studies from the University of Hull, Yorkshire, UK. He is widely published in international peer-reviewed journals and has authored several books, including Pakistan's nuclear policy, a minimum credible deterrence, nuclear deterrence in South Asia, new technologies and challenges to sustainable peace, and India's evolving deterrent force posture, temptation for preemptive strikes, power projection, and escalation dominance. Dr. Khan, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Riaz, and thank you very much for inviting me to this very important webinar on the commemoration of YOUM-E-TAKBEER. On that day, we, as Ambassador Naqvi has mentioned, that we tested in response to India's nuclear weapon test. So thank you very much, Ambassador Naqvi, for the invitation as well. I'm going to speak, and I will try to be within 10 minutes, because time is running out, and we perhaps, would get little time for a Q&A session. Many thanks for inviting me to the CISS webinar to commemorate the YOUM-E-TAKBEER by recalling 24 years of Pakistan nuclear weapons test. We all know the genesis of Pakistan nuclear development of nuclear weapons, how and why it developed these nuclear weapons. I don't want to go into a detailed historical perspective. One of the primary aims of Pakistan's nuclear weapons is to maintain deterrent stability under the evolving strategic environment in South Asia. In fact, Pakistan has been maintaining deterrent stability while successfully deterring India each day consistently for 24 years since Pakistan tested its nuclear weapons capability on May 28, 1998, 24 years ago today, in response to India's nuclear test in the same month in the year. That said, it is interesting to note that because of the fear of nuclear weapons use, there has been no major wars for 24 years between India and Pakistan in South Asia, while within 24 years from 1947 to 1971, India and Pakistan fought against each other for 3 times without nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons could have prevented India and Pakistan to wage war against each other in those 24 years as well. This historic analogical contextualization of pre-nuclear 24 years and the post-nuclear 24 years reflect the essence of nuclear weapons while ensuring deterrent stability in South Asia. Nuclear deterrence is ensured with capability we have developed and the credibility we can deliver. The primary aim of Pakistan acquisition and testing of such capability was security. That remains a predominant factor in Pakistan's security mechanism. In fact, Security factor remains a predominant factor for all nuclear weapon states, including that of the US, that was the first country to acquire and use nuclear weapons. It also enjoyed nuclear monopoly for some time until it was broken by the Soviet Union during the Cold War, during the start of the Cold War, the nuclear weapons test. If it were the technological factor, today there are many countries embraced with the state-of-art technology, but do not have to do with acquiring nuclear weapons and don't even need nuclear weapons. If it were the economic factor, many rich countries can buy nuclear weapons off the shelf, but they cannot. That said, in the existing literature on nuclear strategy and force portioning, one can find out the common agreement between the leading scholarship and the security factor remain the predominant factor for a state acquisition of nuclear weapons. Even some of the nuclear pessimists, such as the Scott D. Sagan, widely read and cited article on why do states build nuclear weapons, printed in 1996 in International Security Academic Journal, primarily emphasizes on the security imperative amongst the other two factors, such as the norm models and the domestic politics model. However, the prestige factor, the technological determinant, the bureaucratic struggle, and the economic advancement can be many other factors defining pathways for a state acquisition of nuclear weapons, but they are not the ultimate factors for a state to acquire these capabilities. The ultimate role of Pakistan nuclear weapon is not to fight a war, but rather to prevent one. It is to maintain deterrent stability and ensure broader strategic stability in South Asia, where Pakistan successfully prevents its potential adversary to wage military strike against Pakistan. Pakistan's credible nuclear weapons capability has already shunned the malign intention of its adversary. Pakistan's nuclear weapons and its related delivery systems are preventing its adversary every day. In addition to its nuclear weapons for deterrent purposes, Pakistan aspires for peaceful uses of nuclear technologies, as Ambassador Naqvi has rightly mentioned. To meet its increasing energy demands, Pakistan has a number of nuclear power plants aims at producing electricity. These power plants function under the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. This clearly indicates and reflects Pakistan compliance of international institutions on how best to use nuclear technologies for peaceful purposes. All these meet the requirements of the people of Pakistan, which in turn prevail the peace and prosperity in all the provinces of Pakistan at large. The appropriate uses of nuclear technology for peaceful purposes not only benefit Pakistan, but also remains environmental friendly, cheaper, safer, and more reliable. Even if Pakistan develops effective and reliable countermeasure against its adversary, the purpose behind this is to retain balance and prevent war, thus again ensuring deterrent stability, which otherwise is undermined by India by increasing and modernizing its deterrent forces, both in the conventional and nuclear domain, as Dr. Asma elaborated in detail. Pakistan does not do this. It is a responsible nuclear weapon state. It never misfires its missile across the border while endangering the risk of miscalculation and escalation. It follows the norms and values related to uses of nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. It ensures the protection and safeguards of nuclear forces and its related materials. Unlike India, it has no such record of missing its nuclear-related facility. It uses its nuclear technology for peaceful purposes to benefit the people of Pakistan more broadly. Its records of compliance to international institutions such as the IAEA remains appreciative and remarkable in the world, never missing fissile material unaccounted for. It follows credible minimum deterrence. Its total nuclear forces are not more than any nuclear weapon state in the world, including that of India. It has a robust and centralized command and control system. Its nuclear development program remains India-specific. It follows nuclear ambiguity that suits Pakistan in most of its strategic imperative. It has a calculated strategy against its potential adversary. It never desires to indulge itself into bigger and never-ending arm race. It retains balance rather than parity when it comes to competing deterrent force postures. Certainly, it attempts to plug the missing deterrence gap for its own protection and security. It jealously guards the guardians. It never intends to transfer its nuclear technology to other countries and largely proceed often with the wide-scale propaganda to malign the credibility of Pakistan deterrent forces. It ensures the credibility of its deterrent forces in the fast evolving strategic environment of South Asia. It has already proposed India for initiation of strategic restraint regime in South Asia. It has held a number of nuclear confidence building measures. It also practices nuclear moratorium. Unless India goes for more nuclear weapons tests, Pakistan largely practices restraint in this context. Pakistan never compromises on its security, even if it has to use nuclear forces for its ultimate survival when it is absolutely needed. It responsibly does not intend to use nuclear forces when it is absolutely not required. It believes that its nuclear forces are credible enough to deter its adversary. It ensures the credibility of its deterrent forces during both peace and crisis time. Because credibility remains the very essence of nuclear deterrence. Pakistan practices restraint, which is the very essence of strategy, both in the military and the nuclear echelon. To conclude, it is to emphasize again that Pakistan has a cool, calm, and calculated strategy like any other nuclear weapon state. It needs closely and carefully, it reads closely and carefully what its adversary does and why, while preparing well itself against the adversary accordingly. Pakistan nuclear forces are for deterrent purposes. It might never become a part of treaty that remains biased and discriminatory. It favors a restrained regime in South Asia, but it might never become part of arms control and disarmament processes that compromises on its vital security interest. Therefore, Pakistan should remain a confident nuclear weapon state. As Ambassador Naqvi has mentioned, that we are a confident nuclear weapon state while possessing nuclear weapons for deterrent purposes, ensuring the strategic stability in South Asia. It should never indulge into a bigger and never-ending arms race in South Asia. It should produce effective countermeasures when it is absolutely needed while filling the missing gaps. It needs to ensure deterrent stability, credibility by retaining the balance rather than the parity against its adversary. As long as Pakistan nuclear forces remain credible and capable of being delivered to hit the targets accurately with speed, these forces are meant to have done their job by creating the fears in the mind of the adversary. And this is the essence of nuclear deterrence. Speed, accuracy, precision, modernized remote sensing is part of emerging technologies that many established nuclear weapon states are seriously considering to embark upon. Those who lag behind in the new technological era would suffer the most. Moreover, Pakistan needs to have a political stability, good governance, economic prosperity, balanced circulation of money, improved law and order condition, strong and disciplined institutions, better relationship with all the neighboring countries, including that of a major powers, both regional and international. Work hard to build exclusive economic zones for building and reviving industry once we had in the 1960s with the upward trajectory to increase our import more than we export we do today, and develop trust and confidence in our capabilities and potentials to raise this nation to the standard our founding fathers once dreamed for us. Because nobody can change us unless we have the will to change ourselves. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zafar Khan, for your illuminating analysis of Pakistan's nuclear policy and deterrence strategy in various aspects. I'm going to open it up to questions now, but let me use this opportunity to pose the first question to the panel, and anyone may like to respond briefly to it. And this is the question that other researchers from among the audience have also asked. So they are curious to know the reaction of the Western world to Pakistan's nuclear tests on the 28th of May, 1998. So anyone can take the lead and answer this question. Thanks. So you are on mute. Sir, I think there is an issue in your connection, or I don't know. You are not audible to me. I don't know whether other speakers are able to listen to him.
No, the voice is not clear. Can't hear him properly, please. I can't hear you.
So there's a problem in your connection. Dr. Khwaja, maybe you or Dr. Zafar Khan may answer this question about the reaction of the international community until the connection issue is resolved from Mr. Naqvi.
Okay. Do you want me to speak a little bit?
Sure. Yes, sir.
what was the question? Can you repeat the question, please? Because the voice was not.
The response of the Western community on the Pakistan's nuclear tests on May 28th, 1998. The reaction.
All right. Okay. I think this is very simple. When we have in history a lot of books. When it is quite clearly written that there was a lot of pressure on Pakistan after India tested once India tested in 1974, which India calls as a peaceful explosion, but this we don't agree, and until today we say it was a nuclear test, and a nuclear test is a nuclear test. There was a lot of pressure on Pakistan after India tested in May 11 and May 13, if you knew, and we had to respond to this, to follow suit. But when we see the West, they always would say, well, we'll give a lot of money, we'll give a lot of arsenals, and the commercial capability will improve this and that. But the nation, from the very beginning, from the very onset, was committed. It was all institution, all the nation got together, and were committed, in mind, in spirit, in words, to go and in pursuit of our responses, to our adversary. And there we go. With all these pressure, with all these, diplomatic coercion, we finally went and we did it. I wish, we could do in other parameters, other indicators, as I mentioned in the last conclusion as well, so that we could raise our standard as a nation, in the international community. So we did, as a nation, we did, and we were committed. I stop here.
Can you hear me now, Riaz?
Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
Okay, you see, I was saying that you have asked about the reaction of the international community, particularly the Western countries, to our nuclear tests. I was here in the ministry as Additional Secretary Americas at that time, when this, in May 1998. And first, I'll talk about the reaction to the Indian nuclear tests. When the Indians conducted their nuclear tests on May 11 and 13, we monitored the situation and we found, they professed ignorance about it, because, the CIA, their intelligence agency, is known for its satellites all over the world, its monitoring of all seismic tremors and seismic activity, and it without with all that capability, they said, they professed that they did not know about the Indian test before it occurred. So they, in that manner, obviated the question as to why they did not persuade the Indians to not to undertake the test. And then the reaction to the Indian test was very nominal condemnation. And of course, some editorials came out in the Washington Post and New York Times and all that. But there was no massive outrage on the part of the international community. And that is one reason also why we decided to go ahead, because we saw that the international community did nothing to either preempt it or to take action against India. So Pakistan was thus realized it was like being shaken by the very event that this represented, that we have to look after our own security and that we have to fend for ourselves. So the international community, I think, was at fault for not reacting in a strict manner to what the Indians did. And therefore, when we did our tests, they, of course, raised it with us. But we merely pointed out to what the Indians had done, and that they should worry, that they should have worried about that. And it was inevitable that if India does it, then Pakistan would do it too.
I think this was a quite biased approach, as Ambassador Naqvi has mentioned, a quite biased approach of the international community. This is what we write, and we do write and publish as well, that the West needs to have a balanced approach, towards the South Asian region as a whole. Unless there is a balanced approach by the West, whoever the leading power is, in the West, including the US, the peace and the prosperity and peace would not prevail. The strategic stability would be undermined. The deterrent stability of the countries that both they have, that would be undermined as well. And you see that there would be danger of more crisis and more conflict in the region. I think this biasness need to be ended now. But this is very unfortunate, the international parameter, the international politics, where nation they go for meeting their national interest. So this is very unfortunate when we see the paradigm of international politics, how it works in the international system. Well, we receive more questions if there is any.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Khwaja, would you like to respond to it, or I can pose some questions that are especially directed to you?
Very briefly, as Dr. Zafar said, termed it as a biasness, but I would call it the perception of best, because this is only how their national interests are driving them. So we have to see, before terming it or labeling it as biasness, we need to see what are the strategic drivers behind such posturing. And we all know clearly that why West is always following a policy of appeasement for India. Even now, we have seen on this recent Russia-Ukraine crisis, the way West is dealing with India, and the difference between dealing with India and the other states which are not following the instructions or the footprints of the Western policies. Thank you so much. To the next question, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the panel fine if I ask this round of questions, because I think we are running short of time. We are only 2 minutes left. If it is fine with you, I can ask a couple of questions in this one round.
Yes, Riaz, I think we should be a little more flexible in this regard, because after all, we have all gathered here and it is a discussion that is very interesting. So I would suggest that we allow a little more time and maybe we can go on for 20 minutes more, up to 9:20, if it is okay with the other panelists.
Sure, sir. So there are some questions where there are some common themes. I mean, some people are asking about the impact of cyber warfare capabilities on strategic stability of South Asia, and someone has asked whether why Pakistan hasn't developed cyber weapon capabilities, and also someone has asked about the role of media in nuclear signaling, a role of media during crisis situation. So anyone can take the lead and answer it.
First of all, when can I answer? Can I start with the answer?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
First of all, when they say why we don't have cyber weapons, so this is in itself is an incorrect term, because there is nothing thing as such. The cyber weapons is nothing, because weapons are computerized, and that is why they can be controlled, operated, launched through interfering in their computer networking, which we call it cyber domain. So that is what cyber thing is. So we should not have this, actually we should not have this Hollywood image of all these emerging and new technologies, and should not most of the question, like Riaz you asked, they are based on such fascination about those weapons. Cyber security, cyber domain for nuclear weapons, it's very important, because we all know about supercomputers, about coding and decoding of nuclear weapons, and how what I said, that was based on that we need, India and Pakistan need to talk about the confidence building measures in terms of the cyber domain. We should not, in the interest of the best of humanity, we should refrain from interfering in the computer cyber networking of our sensitive weapons. So this is what I was talking about. And then the third question was on media. Yes, media plays a very important role in nuclear signaling. But what do you mean by nuclear signaling? Because there is one thing which is very important, that is strategic signaling. And strategic signaling can be done through different rhetorics presented by and repeating or echoed by media. So strategic signaling is usually very important, but yet a sensitive matter. We cannot leave it upon those people who are not trained to talk about these issues. So definitely, and for strategic signaling, diplomatic postures, even military posturing, policy doctrines, and their reputation on media plays an important role. We all know that with the contemporary revolution of media, and media becoming more influential with every passing day, the journalists are performing the role or duty of a diplomat, which at the first place they should not. So such question like nuclear media's role in nuclear signaling, I believe that would empower media persons more and they would become the decision makers, the policy makers, and the strategists to decide about when, how, and where. So therefore, these sensitive matters should be, we should leave them in the capable hands of the trained, I would say, technocrats who are trained to deal with such issues. Thank you.
Can I have 2 minutes, please?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. The implication of cyber on strategic stability, or the implication of a cyber, or for example, in the nuclear domain or the conventional domain. This is an emerging
Cyber
technology.
weapons as well as hypersonic weapons. These advanced.
Right. So there are good readings in the existing literature. It comes from the 1990s. The Rand study in the US. Rand, they produce a good policy paper. Cyber war is coming. If anyone has read this 40 plus pages piece, very interesting piece. And then in response to this, there is another piece, which was published in Strategic Studies by Thomas Reed, who is there in the John Hopkins University these days. He's a professor over there. He also writes, cyber wars will never take place. Cyber war will not take place. So this is very widely read and cited piece, very interesting, in which he gives a theoretical framework of a closets on war, and he gives that imperatives and the essential ingredients of why war happened and what are those ingredients. So a little bit in academic domain, but in terms of the emerging technology, because cyber is part of emerging technologies, it is anyway emerging, and it is embedding into strategic studies anyway. So, but things are still speculative, highly speculative, whether or not the emerging technologies, how emerging technologies would affect, So there would be people, scholars in the existing literature who would agree that it will affect, to a greater extent. Other would speculate hugely that it would perhaps, undermine strategic stability and deterrent stability when these cyber attacks, particularly the offensive, where the defense is less preferred, than the offense. There comes the defense and offense perspective or theoretical domain when it comes to cyber studies. So I would suggest, that the student, particularly the one who has put the question, would read in the existing literature and understand the theoretical perspective, and in this context, and come up with a conclusion whether or not cyber and other emerging technologies anyway coming up and emerging, and perhaps they would affect broader strategic stability as well, if they are wrongly used or offensively used against the adversary. So I would end here. Thank you.
Yeah, Riaz, these questions, it appears that they are actually focusing on that if the character of war would be influenced by the conduct of war. So we need another session to talk to for academic debate on this very old and pertinent debate in strategic studies, that how emerging technologies, or if emerging technologies would affect the character of war.
Exactly, ma'am. I think that there's a whole range of questions on the cyber warfare capabilities in Pakistan and the role of media. So I think we should have another session for that. So Ambassador Naqvi, if you can talk about the challenges that Pakistan is facing after these 24 years in the context of developing or establishing its discourse on its nuclear safety and security and nuclear weapon capability and these things.
Yeah, you see, I think Dr. Zafar made the point that the deterrence is holding, and so did Dr. Asma Khwaja, which is true, which is very true. But the deterrence is very fragile because, you know, even in a global sense, in fact, there is talk of use of nuclear weapons in the context of Ukraine. Even President Putin has hinted at that. But in our immediate regional context, I think the deterrence is fragile because of provocative actions by India. I mean, they are the biggest purchasers of arms, conventional arms. They are also developing their nuclear arsenal, as Dr. Khwaja said, that they have many unsafeguarded facilities which they have not declared. So you know, in the Indo-US nuclear agreement 123, the Indians declared only 14. Out of 14, they declared, I think, 8 facilities, and the 6 were not declared. So they have undeclared facilities, and their overall aggressive attitude, especially the Hindutva philosophy and their, you know, multiple and numerous statements talking of Hindu supremacy, of these are indicators of a mindset which is dangerous, and it is something that we have to be very worried about. We have to keep monitoring what they are thinking and what they want to do. It's not, and even if they don't show the intent openly, they have the capability now, so they can be highly irresponsible. And that is something that we have to worry about. As far as the Western countries, they don't react. They have developed an approach of turning a blind eye virtually to whatever is happening in the strategic context of South Asia. So we are faced with this big challenge that you asked me about. The challenge we are faced with, this big challenge of Indian capabilities and Indian mindset, and both are worrisome. Thank you.
I would like to add a small thing. As
Sure.
Ambassador Naqvi rightly pointed out, that deterrence is a fragile thing. And I would just like to add that we somehow conceptually, we think that deterrence is a product. It's a process. And that is why it's fragile, because we need to intact and make this process credible all the time. So it is not like we have created a product and then it would be fine till end without investing in it. So we need to invest credibility in deterrence continuously to make it effective and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So I've got another question. This is about the role of US and China. So do you think if US role in this South Asian conflict is in favor to India? And I mean, how do you see this role of US and China in the India-Pakistan conflicts? China being is China being the neutral player, or is it taking side of anyone? Or if US is being neutral, or I mean, anyone can respond to it. And how is it affecting the strategic stability of South
I
Asia?
wonder these questions are so comprehensive and they need such detailed answers that it is very difficult to summarize the answer in 1 minute. But very briefly, China is beneficiary or would be beneficiary of the stability in South Asia. Why? Because China is one, it neighbors South Asia, so any instability or any chaos in South Asia would directly affect China's strategic or economic ambitions. So this one thing, and then China definitely have this One Belt, One Road, and CPEC, all other economic projects. And the basic aim of those projects is also to invest in the stability of the regions surrounding China. US is sitting very far away from South Asia. Any instability or chaos in South Asia, or God forbidden, any nuclear accident in South Asia, has this potential to challenge the international status quo. And last time when this international status quo was challenged, that was one when Britain from a colonial power reduced to UK, United Kingdom. So any challenge to the international status quo may cost USA a lot. So that is why I don't see that any international state could invest in the instability of the region, but definitely the economic interests of the USA and this desire, as I earlier I've said in several other talks, that India seeks its strategic significance by instigating the strategic anxieties of the USA vis-a-vis China. So this is how India plays its game to be or remain very important in US policy of containment of China. Or maybe it is one of the few relevance of India for the USA. So when but this is not something which Pakistan, in this scenario, Pakistan also can seek maximum strategic significance for itself as well. So I always say that Pakistan can be a peace broker between China and the USA. If USA and the Taliban had an agreement and USA got this opportunity to peacefully exit from Afghanistan, then China is a very mature, well-behaved, responsible international state actor. So Pakistan can also seek strategic significance from this scenario by having a constructive perspective and worldview and attitude towards the problem, unlike India that divide and rule, create misunderstandings and insecurity, and then seek your strategic significance within a certain framework. Thank you.
Dr. Zafar, you also mentioned about the bad intentions of India in, for example, launching this BrahMos missile. So why do you think international community I mean, I haven't seen any international major player raising any question on these mischievous activities. So why do you think is that, and what should Pakistan do about it? Thanks.
I think it is very unfortunate, and we have mentioned, and we have written somewhere in the Express Tribune as well, this misfiring of the missiles, right, today, which India perhaps, would not disclose, and why it did it. But the time will come, eventually we'll come to know why it happened. There is a little pressure by the international community for a variety of reasons, as Dr. Khwaja has mentioned, the strategic imperative of the international community and the geopolitical interest of the West, particularly the US, in the region. So therefore, there's a very little pressure, in India, why, but we have to have some responses, some very credible responses that we can produce if something happens in the future like this, because this is very serious, this could carry a bomb as well, this could carry a warhead, then what? So I think we need to strategize and tell credibly, through our leadership, that this time around, if next time around this happens, so we could have different options, I don't know the options, but I'm not in the policy making, but I think there need to be a layer of options, which I think some of them can be disclosed and tell them straight away that if this happens, these options we have, we could utilize against the adversary. But thank God it did not it did not carry a warhead. It did not, make a collateral damage. It perhaps wanted to test our capability or test our resolve or test our, responses, so I think, but we did tell the international community in different forums, we did send that message loud and clear. But then we need to have a different layer of options as well, as to what need to be done, if something happens in the future as well, carrying something which is damaging, to our sovereignty and territorial integrity. So this is against the sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is the violation of this. If my missile goes there into India, they would come up with a UN cry. And the international community will start beating the drums, that this is a failed state and this, is irresponsible state. But there is nothing, of such, against India, what it did after, misfiring that missile in our territory. So this is very unfortunate, but I think we need to be prepared with a different layer of options, against the adversary in the future.
Yeah.
That's much better.
I have also written an article on this misfire of BrahMos missile, and those audience who are interested in getting into the details and academic analysis of the situation, they can Google that article and read it for further details.
Indeed. Ambassador Naqvi, you want to add anything, or I should wrap up the discussion with your closing remarks? As you please.
Well, why don't I combine what I have to say along with the closing remarks, because we have to save time.
Sure.
On the question of the US-China business, I wanted to make a comment that China is trying to redress the imbalance that has been created by the Indo-US nuclear deal, because China continues to provide to Pakistan nuclear technology and nuclear facilities, especially in K2 and K3 in Karachi. They are undertaking the entire project, and these K2 is already done and K3 is expected soon. So the Chinese are the only country or people who have been helpful to Pakistan in maintaining a kind of balance in terms of our capability with the nuclear technology, etc., vis-a-vis India. So I think, apart from being a Pakistani, which I greatly appreciate the Chinese help, but apart from that, China is actually maintaining a balance in regard to the nuclear capabilities of the two countries. Now, having said that, I will quickly make 2 or 3 points about in terms of the conclusion of this. If Riaz, it's all right with you.
Sure, sir.
Sorry.
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
This has been a very interesting and useful discussion on the anniversary of Pakistan's nuclear test. And a thorough analysis has been undertaken by the worthy speakers of the various aspects of the nuclear tests that Pakistan and its immediate fallout that Pakistan had undertaken. so the Indian context has been elaborated by Dr. Khwaja very well, and also the deterrence context has been explored by Dr. Zafar Khan. I have tried to give the background of the circumstances that led to the tests and how Pakistan now looks at this entire subject in terms of non-proliferation and arms control. So this is a comprehensive discussion, which I hope will benefit our listeners and also mark this day with some food for thought for what policies should be about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Naqvi. In the end, I want to thank the speakers, Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, Dr. Asma Khwaja, and Dr. Zafar Khan for a great discussion. Thank you all for tuning in. This video will be uploaded to the CISS website in a day or so, or it will be available on CISS Facebook page if it's live streamed. So if you missed the beginning and want to watch it again, you can just check our website. So we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.